All right. Hello, hello. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. We are off to a slower start today. As Reuseful said in the YouTube chat, we do the chat part, Epos does the AFK part. Yes, indeed. Hello, hello. All right. Welcome to AFK Chat, my Tuesday live show that seems to just go very poorly every week, and that's fine because we have fun here on this show. This is a weekly show I do on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. where we talk about some products that I have wanted to cover but don't necessarily get around to making a full video on or what have you. That's the fun of it, is the rough nature of it. Yeah, I mean, this is more of a casual kind of sit down to talk about products. Now, today, I am still under the weather, as is the case every year. I usually have at least 1 month where I spend the entire month with a sinus infection, sounding stupid, which is frustrating given that I want to do microphone reviews this month, and that hasn't worked out yet. So today we are talking about HDMI switchers and matrices. And before you click away, because that's not what you care about, there's one that I think will actually change the game for a lot of streamers that I wish I knew about sooner. Now, I say sooner in the fact that I have actually known about this since last fall. I just haven't gotten around to covering it. That's the whole point of today's show. But this is really game-changing, and I can't wait until something like this comes for HDMI 2.1. So for context, before we go any further, typically the kind of device you would use to set up multiple game consoles or multiple computers or whatever. For example, down here under my desk, and this is not a flex, I use it for work purposes, and this one's already scuffed up too. Cool! I have scuffed up Xbox Series S, X, and PlayStation 5 consoles sitting below my desk that I use for swapping between for my... Yep, that's a scuff mark that's just not going to come off. Lovely. Sitting below my desk, getting run into by my chair, a Xbox Series S, X, and PlayStation 5 that I use for switching between for my Digital Foundry captures and for capture card testing and things like that. Now, typically, in order to, connect them all, you'd either need a multi-input capture card, which are more expensive, multiple capture cards, which are more expensive, or something like this, which is just a basic 4 or 5x1 HDMI switch. Now, I have quite a few of these. I typically recommend some from Monoprice. But hit it with the magic eraser. Yeah, I probably will get them out with that in the future. But this is one of the newer ones. It's fairly affordable, $32, not super bad. But it's just a basic switch. So you have your 5 inputs and the 1 output, and you switch between your consoles. This one supports full 18 gigabits per second. So you've got 4K 60 FPS or 60 hertz at 444 chroma subsampling. Wait, someone's saying stream over? Hello? Excuse me, it's working on the Amazon end. Why does this happen? This happened last time. When I ended last week's stream, it just like kicked the bed. All right. I'm getting a notice from YouTube that my bitrate is higher than the recommended amount, even though the recommended amount was 50, and I'm well below 50. But I went ahead and dropped it back down a little bit. Yeah, it's working on Amazon, so OBS didn't die. Anyway, all right. Looks like refreshing was the solution. Anyway, there are obviously, there are tons of switcher options from different brands, but this one is a basic one that'll do 4K 60. It'll do 444 chroma subsampling. It'll do 1080p 240, 1440p 120, whatever. So it'll work with next-gen consoles. It'll work with most modern PC systems, assuming you're within the bandwidth, etc., etc. But you are still reliant on a capture card that either supports those specs. So you need a much more expensive capture card that supports 4K 60, supports HDR, supports 1440p, 144 hertz, or 1080p, 240 hertz, or whatever. And you're still reliant on the capture card to be active in order to work. So for a lot of PCIe capture cards, for example, your computer has to be powered on in order for the capture card to be powered on, in which case your pass-through doesn't work. Or you may have a capture card that doesn't have pass-through or whatever. So I've used this switch for a while. I recommend it. It's fine. But there is another product, which is this one right here. This is called an HDMI matrix. Now, typically, these are incredibly expensive. Because of the Amazon stream, I can't show you the typical monoprice site. But typically, you know, newer spec HDMI matrices cost $600 whenever a new HDMI spec comes out. And they don't get cheap for quite a long time. Well, this brand called Ezku, which is a hilariously dumb name, as always with some of these Amazon products, has created a 4K capable HDMI matrix that supports all of these things for under $100, which is mind-boggling to me. So I already have, as you can see here, I've already bought 2 of them. I use them in different setups. This thing is $80 as is, and then you have a 10% coupon that you can use to save even more from it for X amount of limited time. And so you can check that when you're checking out. But this thing is pretty magical for a few reasons. So we're going to cover the reasons because it's not just the multiple outputs. So if you're unaware, the difference between an HDMI switch and an HDMI matrix comes in the way you route your inputs and outputs. So the standard HDMI switch that I showed before has 5 inputs and 1 output. You select your input and it goes to the output, and that's about all you get functionality wise out of the product, which is fine, but pretty limited. With the HDMI matrix, you get 4 inputs and you get 2 outputs. So, you know, by default, you can run it as an HDMI switch plus an HDMI splitter. So then, for example, if you have a capture card that doesn't have pass-through, or you have multiple displays you want to run it to, or you want to run it to a display and the capture card, and then run the capture card pass-through to something else, you can do that. What's more powerful in the actual matrix aspect here, however, is the fact that you can actually run different inputs and different outputs at the same time. So you have on the device itself here, by the way, I have fixed my autofocus, so that has been fixed from one of our previous streams. You have your selector for 4 inputs, but you also have your selector for which input goes to output 1 and output 2. And so you can send, for example, you can send your PlayStation to output 1 and your Xbox to output 2, which could be useful if you have everything connected and want to do split screen setups for, you know, 2 people playing at the same time, or you want to keep an eye on updates that you need to hop on for a new raid or something while you're playing a game on another computer or on another console, waiting for that update to go through, or, you know, anything like that. You have that capability. But we're not done yet. The true magic in this one specifically that makes it stand out from other HDMI matrices is this has a scaler built in and an EDID manager. So EDID is the display identifier tech that is very important in modern monitors and graphics cards for specific, you know, higher format specs for HDMI 2.1 and higher, or 2.0 and higher. So you have a default EDID selector directly on the HDMI matrix itself. So you can select the main EDID that it runs with is either full fat HDMI 2.0 EDID, which will do 4K 60, 444. You got Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, surround sound, 3D, and HDR. You can choose the 2K EDID, which will drop it down to 1080p HDR with 2-channel audio. 3D is still supported. Or you can select copy, and it will actually copy the EDID of the display that you have connected to the first output. So this gives you a ton of potential to then customize what inputs and outputs you can run based on the monitors you have available, based on the specs. But then you have 2 little dip switches here. And this is the final one more thing. You have these 2 little dip switches. So what this allows you to do is connect a monitor and still run your game console at 4K or at 120 hertz or what have you, and have your second output be dropped down to 1080p 60 hertz. This works with 4K 60 pass-through. It works with, sorry, I'm having to juggle some windows here real quick. It works with 1440p 144 hertz pass-through. It will take all of these, pass it through to the first output to whatever your monitor supports, and then pass through the second output a standard 1080p 60 signal that you can then use with a older capture card or an older, you know, a capture card without pass-through or whatever. So those of you looking to save money on capture cards, or who have a kind of locked-in capture workflow that you don't want to mess with, this is the secret weapon to making all of this work. So if you buy one of those, I realize this is kind of silly, given that this is a $80 product, but if you get one of those, it's a bit confusing which one is needed exactly, but it's there. I'm not sure what you're referring to. But anyway, if you have one of those like $6 cant links, or you have, you know, those super knockoff capture cards, or you just have a capture card that, for example, doesn't support high refresh rate, but it'll support 60 hertz at whatever formats. This is the secret weapon to unlocking all of those powers. So you get 4 HDMI 2.0 inputs, which are full fat 4K 60, 444 HDR, 18 gigabit per second, and then you get 2 HDMI 2.0 outputs. So you can do 4K 60 and all of that to both outputs at the same time, and that's fine. But you also get control to scale it at the same time. You also get 2 different ways of controlling it. You get an IR extender to run a secondary remote output to it. You also get RS-232 serial connection if you want to control it via PC. And then it has what is supposed to be a locking power connector. However, this, like, once you start tightening it, it just like kicks itself back off the threads over and over, so it doesn't really lock into place. But it is pretty sick, and it even has mounting threads on the bottom for you to mount up in any situation, or you could just use command strips or what have you. Now, and again, and I showed this a minute ago, but for $80 for something that typically costs $500 or $600, this is insane. And in fact, I'm actually going to show you a similar product that does cost as much. Now, granted, it has way more functionality, but this is the HD Fury Diva. So this is something else that I have over in my retro setup that does quite a bit more, but conceptually it's the same idea. It is a $470 splitter, switcher, matrix, whatever. It also has features for ambient lighting. It can do different kinds of scaling, art extraction, and you can control it over Ethernet. So there's a lot more involved. HD Fury makes some of the most badass, like, high quality, you can do whatever you want to the HDMI signal devices, but you are paying nearly $500, which for most people, the functionality you get out of an $80 matrix here is mind-boggling. And like I said, just a year or two ago, these cost the same price as that Diva, if not more, and now these are affordable and are a secret weapon for these setups. The splitter does the same, just has less ports for around $20. A splitter does not do the same thing as this. A splitter is not also a switch, and it will not scale your signal from high refresh rate or high resolution to 1080p. Basically, all of the features I just talked about with this are not in a splitter. A splitter will just split your signal. That's it. This does significantly more, on top of the fact that you can route one input to one output and another input to another output without any of those issues, on top of the EDID management stuff. So, yeah, no, a splitter doesn't do anywhere near that much. I had a question in the chat about whether it passes through HDR. Yes, it does. It will pass through your HDR. So that is pretty cool. And it does have a firmware updating capability via micro USB. I haven't actually looked into the whether they offer firmware updates yet. But honestly, I don't think you need them. But frankly, this is incredibly powerful. And I don't think it kind of conveys how cool it is unless you have a specific capture card that you've wanted to use with these kinds of features. Now, I did want to address a super chat we had in the YouTube chat from Nimmer Comedy asking if we have HDMI 2.1 switches or matrices yet. We do not. There is a specific company that you can find on Google that is supposedly selling them. They didn't actually have active listings until this past week. I've reached out to them. They're supposed to be getting me review samples. However, I'm not 100% certain if they're actually legit or not. Like, the site is kind of shady. It's presented as one of those kind of B2B sites where you're not supposed to buy it as a consumer. So I'm not entirely sure how legit it is. I'm waiting to evaluate it before I really promote it much. But if so, we may finally have an option for these things. But it's not. HDMI 2.1 is still very far off. So, yeah. Alex Herrera says, came in late, but is this a switch? I just spent the past 20 minutes explaining it, so I recommend just rewinding the YouTube stream because YouTube gives you that capability, but there you go. But yes, this does significantly more than a splitter or switch, and I want to show you a specific feature that actually answers Noob Teaching Noob whether it supports 120 hertz, because this is what I didn't expect to work. So the intended feature here, as I plug it in, so I'm going to plug in the power. It takes a 5 volt 2 amp power plug, which is fairly standard for these devices. And then I can connect up my PC to input 1. I can hook up a capture card to input 2. Now, typically with the splitter, you would just end up with the same signal. So if I set EDID to pass through, then both the first output and the second output will get the signal that this computer is outputting back here, which if we go into OBS here and manage this, boom, this is going to take just a second for me to pull up. Transform, bit to screen. So you can see here, although it'll be kind of small, but we are running 1440p 120 hertz right now, which is fine. Like, if you have a capture card that supports it, that's great, that's fine, that's dandy. We can launch a game that supports those specs. For example, Counter-Strike, we can launch it, have some fun. But let's say you have a cheaper capture card that doesn't support it. Let's say you have the Elgato HD60 Pro, or you have the cheaper Cant Links or whatever. Or you have one that'll support 4K, but for whatever reason doesn't support high refresh rate. All I have to do is come over here to output 2, knock it down to 1080p. You will notice the capture card itself changes, but nothing changes on my computer's end. And we are now running at 1080p 60. So yes, I can pass through. The whole point, I always find it real hilarious. I don't want to like talk poorly about anyone specifically, but to answer Mr. Pretty Kitty, who I was just answering for Noob Teaching Noob, yes, it supports 120 hertz. That's literally the entire spiel I'm going on right now. Hello, that's what I'm talking about. You can pass through 120 hertz 1440p or 144 hertz 1440p to your outputs if you'd like, or if you set it to scale to 1080p, it will drop it down to 1080p 60, and the computer you are actually connected to doesn't know any different because your main output is still running the full fat signal, whereas the second output is what is scaled down to 1080p 60, which I think is incredibly powerful. Got a comment in the Amazon chat asking how the RetroTink 5X does with it. I'm not entirely certain yet. I haven't tested it directly, but the 1440p output of the RetroTink is pretty standard, and the 1080p output of it is completely standard, so it would just pass through as normal. Splitters and switchers won't have a whole lot of trouble with the RetroTink, but this won't do any specific upscaling, but it will do downscaling, which is incredibly powerful. Thank you for the super chat, Push X. Much appreciated. And there is no latency on the pass-through. It is both real-time on... It is real-time on the first output. I am not 100% certain on scaling the second output because my latency tester is actually only 1080p. However, I do have another one that we can try here real-time, just kind of pulling it audible. This is the Leo Bodnar 4K 60 latency tester that I have not gotten to work with a single capture card. Something about the signal that this outputs for 4K just doesn't cooperate with capture cards, but I kind of want to test it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect my 4K lag tester to this, see if it works at all in the first place, which may be hit or miss. And if it does work, then we're going to see what the latency throughput for the scaled down version is, because that is what we want to test, because the normal output is already real time, which we can confirm here in just a sec. This will be a messy wiring run, but we're going to do some fun stuff here. So what I'm going to do, as my headset cable runs out of length here, I'm going to plug my latency tester into power. USB port free somewhere. Surely I have more USB ports on this computer. I don't have anything plugged in. Hello? There we go. All right. Got HDMI cable. I'm going to plug HDMI 1 into the latency tester, and we are going to take HDMI 2 and run it to our monitor here. if I ever get the cable unplugged. Whee! There we go. Alright, somehow that just reset my computer monitors. Hopefully the stream did not die here. That was weird. For whatever reason, it temporarily disconnected my monitor, but we are fine. Everything is running smoothly. Amazon says the newer model want to do the same thing. It's 5.1, not 4.2. Yeah, that's why you go to... What? But if I pull up the one that I have linked in the description... Yeah, if you pull up... What? My Stream Deck stopped working. Yay, Stream Deck! You're so reliable these days. Swoop. So, when you click the one that I have in the description, it doesn't say anything about a newer model. So just make sure you click the link I have in the description. Also, that's an affiliate link and helps out the channel and is an important aspect to this whole stream in the first place, but this one doesn't say anything about a newer model, so use the one I have in the description, because that's the 4x2 one that does exactly what we're talking about here. Okay? Okay. As long as we're on the same page. Yeah, my Stream Deck software just completely died. Yeah, the app itself crashed, and I can't relaunch it without risking shutting down my stream, so cool. Yeah, this computer restarts all the time. It's my test bench for the Intel Rocket Lake, the 11th gen, and it's a mess, honestly. I have canceled my review of it because it's such a mess. All right, so we're plugging in the output one of the matrix here to my monitor. Or not, because HDMI plugs are obnoxious as hell. Oh, now I'm turning on my PlayStation. I just ejected a disk out of my PlayStation. Don't store your consoles under your desk without, like, a table for them, ladies and gentlemen. These are all things I could have had planned out and ready to go before the stream launched, but I literally rushed out the door and hit go live at 3 o'clock without any time to prepare. It's been a rough couple of days here. God, I hate plugs on monitors. Whoever thought you should put HDMI plugs up under a bump on the bottom of a monitor rather than just like sticking out the back has never tried plugging in plugs over and over, because it is hell. All right, turn off my PlayStation. All right, we now have the latency tester going. We have output 1 and 2 set to pass through. So theoretically, this should work. Input. HDMI 1. So this will, theoretically, if it wants to cooperate, like I said, I have had terrible luck with this particular lag tester. This is the only one that does 4K, though. Yeah, it just connects back to DisplayPort. So we're going to unplug it from this computer, try to plug it into another power source. And if this doesn't work, I cannot confirm the scaling lag at this time. I would imagine, though, for the scaled output, honestly, it won't matter that much. Like, if there could be, I will say that there could be a frame of lag on the scaled output due to a frame buffer or something. But a frame of lag for your stream copy is not a huge deal. All right. So if it detects the flashing here, so this flashing is sending out a signal to the monitor and waiting to pick it back up with this photo sensor, which is detecting the signal latency. However, you got to get your monitor brightness just right or it doesn't detect it. There we go. So lag 2 milliseconds, and that's including the monitor's lag itself. So no monitor is real time. Every monitor will have some degree of lag at the start of the frame. 1.7 milliseconds at the top of the frame minus whatever the monitor is adding, which is probably 1.7 milliseconds, which we can confirm by plugging directly into it. So I unplugged from the splitter. I'm plugging directly from the lag tester into the monitor so we can confirm. I don't know why it keeps playing disconnect sounds on my computer. I don't have a clue what that is, to be honest. All right, so now we're connected directly to the monitor. So we had 1.7 milliseconds run through the first output of the matrix. We have 1.8 connected directly to the monitor. So yeah, within margin of error, the first output, which is unscaled, is real time. Now, if we connect back to all this and we connect it to output 2, which is the scaled output, we can now confirm whether that runs at real time. So our threshold of existing latency is 1.7 to 1.8 milliseconds. So if we get something crazy higher than that, then we know it's adding latency. So this is scaled down from 4K to 1080p for this monitor, assuming it wants to do it. All right, so that device disconnecting and reconnecting is the latency tester getting picked up by Windows because I plugged it into my monitor power, so it may be acting up now. I need to plug it into a power brick. There we go. All right. And our detected latency when scaled to 1080p is 1.8 milliseconds. So we have confirmed that it operates at real time on both outputs, whether you're scaled or passing through 4K or 1080p. All right, so that was a complete disaster of a demo, but you get the idea. This is the kind of technology I use here for those kinds of testing. Works a little bit better, like I said, when you have a second to set this up and plan it out. But as Rice Cook says, the live stream chaos is the entertaining part, right? That's the idea, right? Got a couple compliments about the mic sound in the Amazon chat. Thank you. This is the Sennheiser HMD26 headset. I will have a video coming on it whenever I shake this congestion so I can actually sound proper. Just catching up on your all's YouTube chat here. Really wish I thought of a splitter sooner. I have 3 capture cards now, troubleshooting stuttering issues. So that is another advantage of, I don't know why I set it down here, of a matrix or even just a basic switch. So that's part of the reason I linked the normal switch in the Amazon links and in the chat as well, or the description as well, is because if you don't plan on doing the weird scaling or anything like that, you don't necessarily need a full matrix. You can save $40 extra and just get the basic switcher here. I forgot my Stream Deck died. You can get the basic switcher for $45 cheaper and save yourself some money because this will do the job. Now, I do want to clarify because people ask all the time, but a video switcher like this, an HDMI switcher for your TV or for your TV or for your streaming setup or what have you, doesn't act the same as a proper video mixer like an ATEM Mini or an ATEM Mini Pro or a TriCaster or something like that. Those kinds of video mixers keep all of the HDMI inputs active at the same time and then will allow you to switch between them or add them picture in picture or whatever. Those are fine if you have multiple camera angles or multiple inputs at the same time that you want to quickly switch between real time on your stream. Using a video switcher like this or the View HD one I have shown here or what have you won't operate quite the same because it severs the connection between each HDMI input and output when you switch inputs. So especially on the View HD one, when you switch between inputs 1 through 5, it will split off that connection and only have one active connection at a time. So if you're trying to use that to switch camera angles or inputs at the same time during a live stream, you're going to have that no signal screen for a minute as it, completes the HDMI handshake in between the different devices. And that is an important distinction to make for those kinds of things. Enrique says, hello to the YouTube chat. Andrew says, you rock EposVox, love your OBS videos. Thank you. Got to take care of the Amazon chat as well. So iExpert C4X is asking, can I stream my games at 120 FPS? So technically, yes. You can actually right now stream 120 FPS to Twitch. It won't look great. You don't have the bitrate available for it on Twitch, and you don't generally have the capabilities to do so. but you technically can send 120 FPS to the platform and it will stream it back. If your viewers don't have transcode, or if you don't have transcoding for your viewers, if you're not an affiliate or partner, and if you're trying to stream 1080p or something high action, it's going to look like poop right now, but you can technically do it. Yes, that is an option available to you. What are your thoughts on an HD-based T matrix versus HDMI matrix? I'm actually going to pull one up if they have one on Amazon here, because I have some degree of issues with these. Yeah, so here's an extender. I don't want an extender. Matrix. So first and foremost, most of them, as you can see here, cost significantly more. $679. But secondly, even when they list these kinds of things, you start to run out of bandwidth pretty quickly, because like you can sort of make it work, but also we're talking 18 gigabits per second versus 1 gigabit per second, or theoretically 10 gigabit per second over Cat 6. Like, you're gonna have some issues. Some of these are cool for I don't know, room, building setups where you're doing AV routing across an entire building, or an office setup, or you're trying to do serious routing for a big broadcast event and you have like a studio space for it. But for a home streamer and things like that, I don't see it making sense or being worth it, especially given the cost difference for the 4K models compared to the $80 here for this one. So that's something to keep in mind. Will AMD improve encoders in their upcoming updates? Probably not. So nope. They have zero interest in working on an H.264 encoder right now. And actually, that does kind of transition us into the rest of today's stream, mainly because I wanted to talk about this primarily specific product here. We can kind of do Q&A for the rest of this. I do need to limit some of the topics based on this being the Amazon stream as well. I can talk about another product that I have picked up here that I don't actually have added to my Amazon queue, so I can add that real quick. Hang on, let me pull that up while your all's questions keep flowing in here. I appreciate you all hanging out with me today for AFK Chat. Most of these are going to be kind of off the cuff like this. It's supposed to be replace my hardcore, video review process for products. Like I could have made a full video essay, 20 minutes or whatever, about this product and done a nice, concise thing, but I don't think it's worth it. Like, I can just tell you the cool features of it, demo it in real time, switching the features like I did, and you'd be good to go. Whereas the video would have taken me weeks to finally finish, and I've put it off for months and months now since before I moved. So I like getting to talk about these kinds of things. So I'm looking for this right here. Yeah, so I have added, I believe that's what I just picked up. Let me see if I can pull it up on the Amazon chat now. Whee! Oh, I gotta save it first. There we go. Return to live stream. Or maybe I have to refresh it. Who knows? I have recently picked up, there we go, there it is. This cool thing. This looks and sounds dumb. So UV filters in the first place are generally considered no longer necessary for digital cameras and haven't been for a very long time. And most people typically buy them to just protect their lenses more than anything else. But this one is specifically a UV and IR cut filter, and it's multi-coated. So it has a red tinted coat to it as well as a bluish one. And this one will actually cut down on IR pollutions specifically for Blackmagic cameras, because apparently Blackmagic cameras don't have worthwhile IR cut filters built in, and you get a lot of IR pollution. And I have been struggling this. So if you don't know, my main shooter that I do my bigger on-camera present videos with is a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K. And the entire time I have had this camera, I have had issues with my skin getting really red and pink and not looking how I look in real life. And it has driven me nuts and made color grading really difficult. This is supposedly I just slap it in front of the rest of my filter stack in my main lens I use on it, and it's supposed to make that easier, because it cuts down on some of that IR pollution. Now, you mostly notice it in like black t-shirts or something like that, especially out and about, but I'm really hoping this will fix some of my skin tone rendition on that camera, because I love the camera. It was super expensive. It is making my life easier overall, but that one specific issue, I'm hoping this cheap little filter fixes, but we shall see. Marius says, I've got 120 hertz monitor and the rest are set to 60 hertz. Even on the stream PC, but I still get stutter. Seems like the only solution is to play 60 FPS. You could be getting stutter that comes from performance issues. You could be getting stutter that comes from the DWM, the Windows compositor, not liking mixed refresh rates. There could be a million solutions, but plenty of people, like right now on my streaming setup back here, I have 120 hertz and 60 hertz. And I don't get stutter when I have things set up properly. So I'd recommend taking a trip to the OBS Discord or our Discord, discord.gg/EposVox, and getting some assistance with that, because that's not inherent to running 120 hertz. Is HEVC streaming possible or not? So it is possible. YouTube enabled that when they enabled HLS and HDR streaming. I covered this in a video back in December. For streaming with HDR, but currently the only program that will let you do it is Marilla's Action, not OBS, because OBS doesn't even have an HDR pipeline and whatever. And so I covered this a little while back, but on top of the fact that technically you can't stream HEVC without paying a license fee for it, so most programs are just kind of hoping to go under the radar, and so OBS will never be in a situation where they enable it by default, because that could get them into some serious trouble, because that violates the patents and things like that for it. So to answer for the upteenth time, yes. Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Have you had a chance to look into HDMI switch with audio extractions? Okay, so this one doesn't have it. I have specifically, what is the brand? What is the brand? Yes, I have. Give me just a sec. I have had, I want to say it's from View HD as well. It's going to take me forever to find. Yes, I have used them that extract to optical audio or 3.5 millimeter. I use them primarily in my retro game streaming corner back on the other side of the studio. They work fine, like as long as you are still sending PCM, stereo, audio, or what have you. The audio extractor ones work fine and aren't an issue at all. I have a link for one. Yeah, link it in the chat and I will pull it up and see if it's one of the ones that I have tried. The View HD also does 120 hertz, right? Yes. So, but it won't do the scaling or anything. But if we pull this back up here, 9 times out of 10. Now, obviously, there's going to be exceptions, but 9 times out of 10, any splitter that supports proper 4K 60 hertz, the newer HDCP standard, and lists the actual 18 gigabit per second bandwidth, that'll work with anything that HDMI 2.0 supports. So that's 1440p up to 144 hertz. That's ultra wide 3440 by 1440 at 100 hertz, and that is 4K 60 1080p 240. Every once in a while, if you get one that tries to adjust your signal at all, it may not support it because it's trying to adhere it to a specific standard or some sort of thing. But generally speaking, anything that lists a proper HDMI 2.0 specs will support 1440p, 120 hertz, and all of that. So that is good to know. I got some questions about Amazon Live. Amazon Live has been around for a little while. I don't know the release date. That's not a productive question, I guess. What's the difference between Amazon Live and Twitch? One is on Amazon, the other is game streaming on Twitch. Like, you can watch me on Amazon right now because it's Amazon Live talking about Amazon products. Right here, boom. By the way, for those of you, obviously I'm trying not to show them right now, but those of you who have been concerned about the Amazon chat showing your names and things like that, you can actually give yourself a nickname in the Amazon chat. All right, so Porta is the HDMI switch. Oh yeah, I've used tons of Porta stuff overall. They have some of the only lag-free component to HDMI and HDMI to component adapters. 4x2 HDMI matrix. Porta, yeah. So this one is actually cheaper if you all want to save a little bit of money if you don't need the scaling. The reason I recommend this ESCU one so strongly is because of the scaling. Here, I'm going to add it to the Amazon carousel as well. Unfortunately, all of the Amazon Live stuff right now I have to do through mobile, which is just insane, honestly. Oh, this one probably doesn't have the audio extractor. Oh, it does. Okay, cool. There we go. So I will feature it on the Amazon stream. The workflow for the Amazon stuff being all mobile-based is honestly stupid, but otherwise it's been pretty solid so far. So here we have the Porta Matrix. So again, I have used a ton of Porta gear. They are cheaper, but they do make some reliable stuff. So this will do, it's a little, search for the 60 hertz one. Oh, 4K 30 hertz. You're right. You're right. I assumed. Wow, it's cheaper for. All right, let me add that to the Amazon. That's hilarious. The 4K 60 one is actually cheaper. Porta HDMI Matrix 4x2. It's the $35.99 one. Now this one doesn't have super high ratings, so people probably ran into an issue with it. But that's fine. Whatever. We will look into it. There we go. I pulled up the correct one. I have someone in chat asking what is the difference between the one you linked and this one. So we're going to pull up that one as well. ESCU. To answer Mr. A's question, as far as I can tell, there is no difference. You just have an Amazon UK link, and I have the Amazon US link. But that is the exact same product. So, yeah. There you go. Anyway. So this is the Porta one. So it has, so the difference between this Porta Matrix right here and the ESCU one that I have been showing off so far today is the audio extractor. So you get 3.5 millimeter, you get coax, and you get toslink. So this makes it easier to route to your audio mixers, your audio interfaces. So for example, you can take the 3.5 millimeter jack and run it into the GoXLR. You can do the same thing with the optical, of course, or you can take the 3.5 millimeter and split it out to 1/4 inch jacks to run into an actual audio mixer, or it makes it easier just to route to an AV receiver for your TV setup overall via these three audio outputs. Technically, you can use this 3.5 millimeter for headphones. I wouldn't. That's not going to be a great experience with minimal volume control, but you can. But otherwise, the main difference will be that this one doesn't do scaling. So the big superpower that I wanted to flex specifically for the ESCU is that this one does scaling. So it will take virtually anything you throw in here and scale it down to 1080p 60 on that second output, which is incredibly important for certain capture card setups. Whereas this one doesn't do any of the scaling. So you're saving $40 if you don't need the scaler, but that is worth considering. Is this a capture card? No. If you're joining in late, I do recommend just rewinding the stream because I've explained all this with demos very thoroughly. Worth keeping that in mind. Mr. A would like an affiliate link for this one, so I can oblige. I can just do... Where did my... Okay, hold up. Missing browser extensions. There we go. And now my Amazon chat. Hello? Everything breaks on stream. There you go, Mr. A. Dropped it in the Amazon chat for you. Much appreciated. All right. So just to conclude and answer the people who are joining late, which again, just rewind it or watch the VOD when it's over. But these are a cross between an HDMI switch, and actually I should pull up the one I'm actually talking about, an HDMI switch, an HDMI splitter, and an HDMI scaler all in one. So it allows you 4 HDMI inputs from next-gen consoles, current consoles, PC, and so on, which will do 4K 60, it'll do HDR, it'll do 1440p 144 hertz, it'll do 1080p 240 hertz, all through here. It will output the spec you are sending to it through one of the inputs, and you can scale either input, actually. So you can you know, you can scale either, but you can pass through one of the outputs with the normal signal to your monitor or whatever, and then scale the second one down to standard 1080p 60, excuse me, for your capture cards that support lower specs or for extra TVs or what have you, which makes it insanely powerful. Plus, by being a matrix instead of just a standard switcher, you can send input 1 to output 2 and input 3 to output 1 at the same time and get both systems going, which could be a way of setting up a switcher that is more flexible for streaming in general, that works out because you could then connect all 4 systems and run it to 2 different capture cards and always be able to select one of those systems on the other capture card. So for example, if you have 2 people that stream and you have one set up and streaming on capture card 1 with input 1, and then you have another one jumping on, they can just set up capture card 2 with output 2 and not interrupt the first person and be pretty powerful there, which is pretty neat. Mr. A is saying, I found the one you linked on Amazon UK, but it's much more expensive. I literally generated the affiliate link from the one that you sent me. So, well, the one you just linked is from Amazon US and is the $130 one. I don't know why that one is $130. Let me take a look here. Yeah, I noticed this when I was looking at it to buy it for myself as well. The $130 or $131 listing of the SQ appears to be the same thing. Oh, I found it. Okay. This is why. So it's technically a different product. You can see here it has EDID management for each of the individual inputs. So the one that I have been recommending here only has 2 dip switches on it. And it is doing EDID management just for the outputs. So you can scale or pass through on output 1 or 2. The $131 one has 4 dip switches, which allow you to customize the EDID and scaling a little bit differently. So you can pass through, you can change output 1 to scale. You get a little bit of more control over the EDID. Honestly, this feels like a rougher version, more of a less polished release. But frankly, I have looked at it a couple times when I was buying it for myself, and I honestly can't say I would consider buying this one over the $80 one. Like, I don't see there being any real advantage that would make sense, at least in my opinion. All right, sorry, I'm trying to keep track of my windows and they're not cooperating. I lost my Amazon live chat. That's cool. There we go. It's back. All right. Whee! All right, catching up on chat. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in today's AFK chat, ladies and gentlemen. I have an Extron DXP with 8 inputs and 4 outputs simultaneously. Got it on eBay for like $100. Yeah, used Extron stuff is always super clutch if you can deal with the space, especially for the older component stuff. However, it will, you know, you're always getting older spec things. So, like, I have a few HDMI matrices for RGB and component sources. I currently just keep them in my attic, but, you know, they are very powerful regardless. Glad I could help, Mr. A. Thank you for hanging out with us. I'm going to swing back over to the correct product here. Shabam. All right, I'm going to take a drink real quick. We're going to run our usual little music ad here.
Do you need stream-safe music for your streams and videos, but want something a little heavier? My awesome community sought to solve that and made Backing Track. Hard rock and heavy metal music, safe for your content and free to use. No subscriptions. Head over to backingtrack.gg to stream it or join our Discord for free downloads.
All right. So I think this comes down to a decision between, and actually I need to pull the View HD one back up here. I think this comes down to a decision between, do you want the scaling capabilities or do you just need a switch? In which case, the View HD one works great. Obviously, there are plenty of other options out there, so grab whichever one you prefer, or if you have experience with one, that's fine. This one has a basic remote with it. But I really believe, even if you don't think you need it now, unless you are completely all in on the future proofing and already have everything sorted out, I would say that other than HDMI 2.1 needs coming soon, the ESCU option is the way to go. That's why I've bought it twice, because I use it for these kinds of setups, and that's how I'm going to get my next gen streaming setup kind of under wraps. I really want HDMI 2.1 devices to start showing up. We're going to be a little ways away on that though, because the HDMI chipsets required for HDMI 2.1 are pretty bonkers, and even the capture card companies I have talked about have said that you're going to be waiting a while for it. HD Fury, which we showed the Diva from, they are always kind of the first to get crazy stuff going with new HDMI stuff, and they had said originally to expect to wait until holiday 2021 for it, and even then that wasn't considering all the semiconductor shortages, so it could probably be longer due to all the shortages now. So those of us with the LG CX, the lovely TV, are probably going to be waiting a while, but that's fine. And overall, yeah, that's about all I had for today. I just wanted to get this out of the way because I've been meaning to talk about this product for a long time, and maybe should the future come, or I'll do a video or maybe a dedicated stream on the HD Fury Diva, because it's such a complicated device with so many use cases that it's kind of hard to do justice by making a video about it, because there is so much craziness going on with it. Because again, it has like 3 different outputs here. One is like meant to just be audio, but it can do downscaling, it can do upscaling, it can do tone mapping, it can do audio extraction, it can do ambient light support. It's super strange. Would need the scaling one for 1440p 120 hertz to just send through 1440p 120 hertz. You do not need the scaler. If you need to connect it to a capture card that doesn't support 1440p 120 hertz, then yes, you need the scaler. I got an ESCU 4K splitter and works great with 1440p source. Yes. What about HDCP for PS consoles? I don't believe either of these will strip the HDCP off of the PS3, but the PS3 was the only system that had HDCP forced on it. Every other game console, you can literally disable it in the software settings. So if you do want HDCP stripping, HD Fury stuff is usually the way to go. Or if you specifically want like the PS3 stripped off, then there is a View HD HDMI splitter that has been around since the Stone Age for $20 that will do that specifically for the PS3. But you only need it for the PlayStation 3. Every other game system that has HDCP lets you disable it. So, All right, opening up the floor for any last Q&A here as we wrap up today's stream. Otherwise, I'll be back next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, as always, here on Amazon and YouTube. Go follow me on Amazon. Link to that stream is the first link in the video description if you're on YouTube. If you're here on Amazon, well, then you are already here. So hit that follow button, like Wuna just did. Thank you very much. And if you are considering purchasing the products talked about in today's stream, go ahead and use the affiliate links in the description and the like as well. Thank you for the information. Awesome stuff. Thank you for hanging out with me. Hopefully next week I'll be a little bit more prepared. Like I said, this week's been kind of rough and just trying to get things under wrap. Or for the PS3, you can use component. Yes, you just also need component capable gear, which a lot of people get annoyed by, but is overall fairly straightforward. PS TV also has HDCP that can't be disabled. Oh yeah. But who's using the PS TV anymore? But yes, you are technically correct. Yeah. Yeah, no, the PS3 and I guess the PS TV by extension. We're oddballs in that. The PS4 lets you disable it. I mean, you can't disable HDCP on any of them if you're running Netflix or playing a Blu-ray. But at that point, just rip the Blu-ray rather than trying to capture it over a capture card. That's what I love about DRM stuff, is DRM always blocks the like least useful / quality / convenient way to rip media that people would only use for just working their setups in the first place. Whereas they don't block the ways that actual like pirates would use to file share the videos, which is always hilarious. But yeah, like you still have forced HDCP for Netflix or Hulu or Blu-ray player, but you don't have it for just gameplay and the OS usage and things like that. What is my headset? Oh, I did not add it to the Amazon chat because I expected to use a different mic today. And I ended up switching last minute. I am using the, let me add it to the chat here, the Sennheiser HMD 26, which I just added to the Amazon carousel. I will tap on it here to feature it. It's not letting me do that anymore, as it often decides to break, so whatever. Oh wait, now I can do it. There we go. It is very expensive, but it's one of the higher quality broadcast headsets that are used for esports and things like that. Has one PC streaming setups gotten just as good as two PC streaming setups? I mean, it depends on what your needs are. In some ways, yes, 100%, and they have been that way for years now. And in other ways, no, and they can never be. I actually have a whole video breaking this down up on my YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and drop it in the YouTube chat, answering that very question. Well, ignore the in 10 seconds part. There we go. But effectively, single PC setups are just fine for quality with modern multi-core CPUs and the modern graphics cards with NVENC and things like that for just basic performance. But there's still stability benefits to be gained from dual PC setups, and issues like Call of Duty Warzone has been a nightmare to capture because of weird DirectX 12 specific issues that they are working on, but has been an issue for like 2 years now that dual PC, works their way out of. Someone's asking, SQ HDMI matrix versus a video matrix. Well, the only a video matrices I am seeing are over $100. So in terms of core functionality here, you're already getting a better deal with the SQ one. So the video one I'm seeing here, this was the cheaper one, does 4 outputs. For streamers, I don't see you ever needing 4 split outputs of your video feed, but if that's something you need, that's an option, and you're paying quite a bit more for it. And otherwise, it seems to have similar EDID switching here. I do not see any mention of scaling, though. So overall, I don't see why any streamer or content creator would specifically need this at all. Nevertheless, in place of the ESCU one. So the scaling capabilities on top of the significantly cheaper price of the ESCU makes it make a lot more sense. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe over on YouTube. Go follow over on Amazon. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I will see you next time. Whee!